Freaky Lad VR is now available for MetaQuest, so it's time to turn that dude's head into a horse. Or maybe a cactus. Or maybe add some eyeballs to his arms. Freaky Lad VR is available now on MetaQuest, priced at £11.99, or your local currency equivalent. It's from a team, VR Factory Pro, that have made quite a few VR games, including really popular titles like Zombie Bar Simulator. And it's trying to do what a lot of VR games are already doing. It's a really simple game where you stand in front of a victim and you have to interact with a couple of objects that are around you to create a monster. We reviewed a game last year called Mad Surgeon Goblin Hospital, and frankly, this is the same game. Mad Surgeon Goblin Hospital was awful for many reasons, but it was very adult-themed and gory. Freaky Lad VR, on the other hand, is bright and colourful and cartoony and built for children. And I can say that without a shadow of a doubt, simply due to the fact that the arena that you're standing in is so low. On the default setting, I had to get on my knees to interact with it, and even when adjusting the height to the absolute maximum, I still felt like I was going to hit my head on the objects on the ceiling in this environment. It is not built for someone of my stature. And that's because it's not a game that's designed to appeal to me. In recent months, we've taken a look at some very different kinds of VR games. VR games that aren't designed for core gaming demographic, but instead for the wider VR audience. And the likes of Shop and Stuff, which we reviewed up here, actually do drum home both the wackiness and the immediacy that children are looking for, but then also add some depth and scalability and growth throughout your time with the game. And then we've got the likes of I Am Security, a really popular game that does none of these things. It simply gives you wackiness for a couple of minutes and then there's nothing else to it. Freaky Lad VR, however, is somewhere between these two. It definitely does not have the depth of Shop and Stuff, and it's not quite as shallow as I Am Security, but there's still not a lot going on here. The core of the game has you standing in front of your patient or victim, and you have a screen on your right telling you what you must achieve. Let's take the example of a horse's head I mentioned earlier. You've got to give this dude the head of a horse. So it will show you that on the screen. It will show you that it needs to be in the head and a horse, and what the size of the head needs to be. And you turn to your left and you take certain components to create a serum that will make this happen. Then once you've created a serum, you inject it with a syringe into your victim. It's pretty simple stuff. You can go completely off script and do whatever the hell you like, make any kind of weird combination that you feel like. Or you can continue through achieving your goals and eventually unlock new options, and thus new tasks to complete with these new options. It's a really simple circular formula, and while it's not ever going to be considered breaking new ground in any way, I mean, it does the job of I Am Security, but a bit better, because there is stuff to do. There is a progression system. There is a challenge involved, albeit somewhat of a challenge that's easily ignorable. And yet it still has all the wackiness. It still has all the, oh, look what I created. I created this weird thing in a couple of minutes. And so, you know, it's a better option than I Am Security, even if it's not a real game with actual true depth. It is an experience for a few minutes. And for some people, that's fine. However, that price tag that I mentioned right at the start of this video, £11.99. For the gaming industry at large, that could be considered quite a budget title. But we all know that these days, VR games are not commanding the premium price tag that they used to. In fact, there is an argument right now that the price point for premium VR is $20, which is the equivalent of about £18 on the Metastore marketplace at least. So this game is considered a mid-tier price point, and I cannot honestly argue for that price point for this game. There are so many fantastic VR experiences out there for around the £10 to £15 mark, the say $15 to $20 mark. And Freaky Lad VR just doesn't even come close to offering the depth or the level of enjoyment as many of those titles. And it's a shame because Freaky Lab VR, what it does all right. There's nothing wrong with the game as such. It's just there's not enough of it. There's no real reason to want to come back after you've done the first 10 to 15 levels and you successfully opened a few new items to interact with, or different challenges have come. You've seen it all. There is nothing else beyond this. You might unlock another rotation, giving you another challenge, which is literally doing the same thing again, just with essentially different items. But you're still only ever doing that one thing that takes you a few seconds to create this monster, and then you're done. And then there's nothing else beyond this. In terms of how well it uses VR, I mean, it's alright. It does the job. You're standing there, you are immersed in this colourful environment. You can walk around a few feet around the outside and check out what's going on. You can casually slap the people that are in your chair or pull them about and have a little fun being mean to them. But again, it's such a shallow experience. There is nothing more beyond that. Now, unlike the aforementioned Mad Surgeon Goblin Hospital, there's no blood or violence in this game. So, yeah, going with that, the height scaling of the game and the wackiness that's involved in it, it's certainly fine for children to enjoy this one. If you're looking for a game for a youngster in VR that just wants a quick 5 or 10 minute go here and there, yeah, there's nothing wrong with Freaky Lab VR. But again, that price point might be a bit of a barrier. You can get so many better experiences for that same demographic for this price point. So ultimately, your take on Freaky Lab VR is going to be, are you looking for a game that is just silly escapism for a few minutes for a, say, 10 to 12-year-old, and not promising anything more than that? If so, Freaky Lab VR, it's a reasonable choice. Again, the price point, bit of a hurdle, but it's reasonable. But if you're wanting something with a bit more depth and you're looking for something that's going to get a younger gamer hooked on VR, something that's going to stand alongside the likes of Fortnite or Roblox as a deep experience, this is not it. There is no depth in Freaky Lab VR. It does what it promises to do. It presents you with a freaky lab, but that's all there is to it. Molar Hole has launched on MetaQuest and is very much a game about digging a hole, which is very much like a game about digging a hole. Now, if that sentence confused you, I wouldn't be surprised, but don't worry, all will be explained in this review. So early last year, there was a game that launched on Steam called A Game About Digging a Hole, and it became super popular super quickly because it had a really simple gameplay loop. The idea was that you have a shovel, you dig a hole, you collect elements, you sell those elements and upgrade things like your shovel or the backpack in which you keep these elements. And you could dig and dig and dig and dig and keep finding more hidden stuff below the surface. Super simple, super entertaining. Molar Hole is exactly the same. It is a game about digging a hole, but in VR. So the general concept of the game is that you are a mole, you see your hands on screen, and you can launch retractable claws to dig through the surface. And you'll dig through the garden that the game is based in and uncover certain items and rocks and things like that, but also quirky items like hourglasses and keys. And you can sell these items to gain currency, which can then be used to upgrade the backpack in which you store these items, or your claws, or buy dynamite for explosive hole digging, and so on. It's the exact same gameplay loop as a game about digging a hole. The differences, of course, with Molar Hole come with the fact that it is in VR. So you're not simply pressing buttons in order to dig the hole, you are swinging your arms. You also can climb in this game. Now, in a game about digging a hole, you could jump and then later buy a jetpack to help you launch your way through the earth to the surface. But in Molar Hole, you can climb your way out of the hole. And that means that you can dig under surfaces and then use the ceiling that you have created in order to climb up. So it's much easier to get out of the hole that you have created. What's more, maybe I was just a bit too accurate here, but I did not experience any kind of fall damage while I was playing Molar Hole. In a game about digging a hole, accidentally stepping off a ledge and falling too far means the end of your run. But in Molar Hole, that doesn't exist. You can leap, although you can't actually jump in this game. You can fall for as far as you like and it won't impact your run. What does impact your run, just as with a game about digging a hole, is your energy level. Your energy level can be seen on your wrist, and this determines how far you can dig before needing to go back to the start, all the way to the surface, and replenish your energy. And this costs money, just like buying upgrades. So you're going to want to balance your energy usage and replenishing your energy with the upgrades that you are buying to allow you to dig further and gather more items and thus create more money. It's a super simple but also super engaging gameplay loop. A game about digging a hole I played last year over the holiday period, and it was a lovely game to play for a weekend. And Molar Hole is exactly the same. It is a wonderful little gameplay loop, a little experience to play for a short period of time. Everything from Molar Hole is just as it is in a game about digging a hole. Even the upgrades you can choose from. The fact that you can buy dynamite and a jetpack and all these other things. The fact that when you dig down in the surface, you can find lots of hidden things that you might not be expecting. Of which we're not going to show too many in this video because we don't want to spoil surprises. It's all centered around the same gameplay loop. Molar Hole is as close a copy to a game about digging a hole as you could get in video games. In VR games in particular. However, it doesn't have all the polish of a game about digging a hole. For example, there is no storyline that I could discover. There is no reason for being here. Now, in a game about digging a hole, it was simply, you bought a house that's rumoured to have some treasure under it, go digging. That was all the storyline there was. But Molar Hole doesn't even have that. It also seems to have far less secrets to discover as you're digging through the garden. And it has a super interesting and unfortunate oversight. So, in Molar Hole, you can grab onto the ledges which allow you to climb back up. And you do this by using the grip buttons on the MetaQuest controller. Pretty standard stuff for climbing mechanics on MetaQuest as things stand currently. But what you can do is you can grab a ledge and then dig all around it so that you're kind of floating in midair. You're not holding on to anything anymore. The ledge that you were holding on to is now no longer there. But you can still stay there as long as you keep that grip button held. So you're essentially floating in midair. This makes the game considerably easier because you no longer have to worry about using your energy to take away little shards and whatever else. You can simply stand there and swing long swipes and remove entire areas very, very quickly. But I mean, adding in the kind of depth of taking away that element from Molar Hole might, take down some of the enjoyment. Part of the reason that you want to play this game is the simple fact of exploration, is the simple fact of no pressure being on you. Should you die, should you run out of energy, the only penalty is that you lose what's stored in your backpack. And that can be annoying, especially if you collect some good stuff. But a little bit of planning going in advance, and you'll never encounter this. I, in fact, throughout the entire time of playing this game for this review, only died once. And that was because I got a little bit too ambitious. So if you plan accordingly, and you're digging yourself down to the hole pretty well, gathering up the equipment on the way and buying upgrades, you're not going to encounter this. It's a very small punishment for a very unlikely consequence. So fixing that bug about floating in midair or oversight, maybe not even a bug, I'm not sure it's worth it because the game is still fun. It doesn't discount from your enjoyment of the game at all. Molar Hole, as it stands, is a super simple, practically carbon copy of a game about digging a hole. And it's fun. It's good. It's entertaining. It's not particularly deep, but it's also not boring in any kind of respect. You will take the time to explore around and be excited by finding new hidden secrets and new things that you encounter as you dig deeper. And you'll also be proud of what you achieve within the space that the game provides. So, Molar Hole, as much as it is not original in any way, shape or form, it is a really good take on a game about digging a hole built purposely for VR. Wreakin Raccoon has come out of nowhere and launched on MetaQuest as the latest title from Endreams, the VR developer that's brought us games like Phantom Covert Ops and Reach. But it's completely different to those kind of games. Stick around and we'll tell you all about it. So Wreakin Raccoon has launched on the MetaQuest store, basically out of nowhere. It said on the store that it launched back in August, but that's not really true. It's literally come in the last couple of weeks. Presumably that August date was a holdover from a previously suggested date, or maybe when the store page went live. But Wreakin Raccoon has arrived, and not much has been said about it. We haven't seen reviews or many videos on the game. It's literally just been put on the store, and that's all we have. So of course, here at 131, we downloaded it and gave it a go, and now we're going to tell you why it's completely different to what you might be expecting from Endreams. As I said in the intro to this video, Endreams are responsible for core gaming demographic titles like Phantom Covert Ops and Reach, and they're a studio that has built itself quite a reputation in VR for delivering high-end, high-quality VR experiences. Wreakin Raccoon is completely going against that grain and doing something very different to what we're used to from the studio. It's a game that is clearly made to take on the more casual demographic, to take on the audience that VR is developing rapidly. The kind of gamers that will download titles like Shop and Stuff, for example. And realistically, it feels like it's Endreams' attempt to recreate the magic of I Am Cat. I Am Cat is a game that launched last year and blew up overnight. It's a game that got a huge amount of attention on TikTok, and as such, had a large audience go ahead and download it and give it a try for themselves. And Wreakin Raccoon is trying to do the exact same thing. We're not seeing journalists reporting on this game or press releases going out talking about it or whatever else, because that's not the target demographic. The target demographic is that 30-second view on social media thinking, ha, this looks like fun. And you know what? Wreakin Raccoon is fun. It's a game where you play as a raccoon and you have a small map with which to investigate, with which to complete tasks, should you wish, or more likely, simply cause chaos. The sequence of gameplay that you'll see in this video takes place in a diner. And around this diner are so many interactive objects that you can just pick up and mess about with and have fun. And there is no consequences, and honestly, there's no point to it, but that's not what we're here for. We are here as a playground in VR to have fun, to enjoy the mayhem. And of course, there are loads of games that do this. In a recent video, I took a look at I Am Security, and I did not like it. But that's because that chaotic gameplay was all there was to it. Whereas Wreakin Raccoon actually does have a decent gameplay loop. It has gameplay systems and mechanics in place that allow you to progress, similar to I Am Cat. It's not just about the chaos. There is actually a game to play here as well. And the tasks that you have involve things like collecting items or whatever else, but they also do have a bit more cryptic tasks going on. One of the early ones that I experienced was to feed the chef some nice food. And it's like, well, how do you do this? If you come across the chef, he's not the most welcoming guy. And as such, you have to work out, how do I get some nice food to this guy? What kind of food does he like? And this is simply done by observing. You can take some time in this game, hide away in a little corner, and observe your surroundings and plot your actions. And that's very different to a lot of the other games in this genre of this ilk that are aimed at younger players. There is space for both, as I keep mentioning, that chaotic gameplay, but also to take your time and play the game. Now, Wreakin Raccoon, it does have issues. The control scheme is Gorilla Tag I Am Cat style control scheme where you use your hands to move, and I often found it to be very imprecise. You can climb any surface, and this is done really well, but the basic movements, often I found myself trying to get into a smaller area, and the game would detect that I'm trying to push off a different wall to what, or a different surface to what I was actually trying to push off to, and thus send me flying in the wrong direction. I'm not entirely sure if this was just me. Maybe with a bit more practice I'd get the hang of it, but honestly, this game is designed for players who clearly play a lot less VR than I do. So if I found it a little rough, I'm sure people with less VR experience probably will too. It also isn't exactly breaking any new ground graphically. The game has some decent, colourful visuals, but the animation loops of the characters, the NPCs that are in the game, are really basic. So much so that, like, when you're squirting a customer in a diner in the face with ketchup, she will get angry at you and then go back to normal with the ketchup still on her face. If you continue to squirt it, she'll do the same angry animation. And there's nothing really more to it. So, in terms of the world that Wreakin Raccoon provides, don't expect particularly much depth. Again, it's those tasks that you can complete and the hidden objects that you can find that bring the depth to this game, not the world in which it's created. And so Wreakin Raccoon really stands apart from nDreams' other titles, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is a studio that brings a lot of clout in VR development, and so them wanting to breach out and try other things other than satisfying that core demographic, which they have been doing so for years, I honestly think they deserve credit for that. This is a studio that's going to branch out and do games for that core audience, probably most of you watching this video, but also games that appeal to a younger demographic, to a demographic that aren't as deeply committed to VR as a lot of the core audience are. So Wreakin Raccoon is trying something new. It's trying to be different. It's trying to find a new audience to allow nDreams to expand, to take on new projects and go in both directions at once. Last year we had Reach, that was designed purely for that core VR audience, the guys that have been with nDreams for a long time. And now we have Wreakin Raccoon to bring a new audience to nDreams' products. So we can't really argue. Things are changing in the VR industry. There is two very different audiences out there. And nDreams is one of those studios that's trying to satisfy both. So Wreakin Raccoon isn't going to blow your mind. It's not going to change your perception of what VR is or can be. But maybe it's a game that you could get someone new to VR involved in. Maybe you've got a younger sibling that wants to give VR a go. This is that perfect game. Salmon Man has launched on MetaQuest and has got a surprising amount of hype around it. It's a pretty simple game that looks super fun in 30-second videos on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. But just because it looks fun in 30 seconds of video doesn't mean it's actually fun to play. Stick around and we'll tell you exactly what's happening with Salmon Man on MetaQuest. Salmon Man on MetaQuest kind of came out of nowhere and developed a large audience due to the fact that it looks quite fun. It's a game that is a platformer, a real challenging platformer game. If you kind of think of like Super Meat Boy or that kind of level of difficulty, but in VR. And the difference being you're not just pressing buttons to time your jumps, you're actually physically moving to make those jumps in this world. And that sounds great, but honestly, I found it intensely frustrating. The game casts you as a part salmon, part man thing, where your physicality is that of a salmon, but you have arms, and you seem to be trapped in a barrel, and you're using a paddle to maneuver. There is no basic movement. You're not able to walk around or anything with the analog stick on the controller or by physically moving in the world. The only movement you have is by knocking that paddle into a hard surface. And that can be below you, to the side of you, above you, wherever. But what will happen is you'll gain momentum in the direction away from where you strike the paddle. And the distance at which you will be pushed, or leap, or whatever it may be, will be determined by the strength at which you whack that paddle into that hard surface. Now, salmon are very famous for swimming upstream, and that's exactly what this game asks you to do. For the intro level, for which you will see the footage in this video, because we don't like including later levels in our videos. We always want to avoid spoilers and such. But that intro level starts with you heading upstream, and should you mistime your jumps and land in the water, you will be pushed back down towards the beginning area. It's really that simple. You have to navigate hard surfaces to bounce yourself around and avoid getting pushed back to a starting area or falling down and having to redo specific areas. Again, kind of like famously challenging platformers like Super Meat Boy. Now, as I said at the start of the video, that looks super fun in short 30-second clips of this game, this weird game where you've got salmon-style arms and you have to bounce yourself around. And had they made a playground for you to do that in, I'm sure I would have found this fun. But they haven't. What the developers have concentrated on is making linear levels that are exceedingly challenging. Now, if that's your bag, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are loving that kind of game, then Salmon Man is perfect for you. But a lot of the coverage we've seen so far hasn't really told us what Salmon Man is, and so that's what I'm going to do in this video. It is a game that is set to challenge you. It is not a fun, wacky adventure. It is a challenging platform game. You will find very, very often that you'll be redoing 4 to 5 minutes worth of bounding around and pushing yourself because you just keep failing at one specific point. And the game makes no affordances for you to do this. If you fail, you must redo it. There's no walking around or level skipping or anything like that, or any helping hands along the way. It is simply, you have these rocks in front of you that you have to bound between, and if you don't do it, you're never going to do it. So what Salmon Man provides is a very intense VR challenge. There's no denying that at all. And again, I mean, for me personally, I found it exceptionally frustrating. It is a well-designed game, and visually, it's nice and colourful and looks the part. But beyond that, I don't really see the appeal of Salmon Man for the average user. The game is priced at £5.99 or your local currency equivalent, so it is a pretty low barrier for entry to get into Salmon Man. If you are someone that wants intense dexterity challenges in VR, Salmon Man is perfect for that. But I get the feeling that this game is designed to appeal to a large audience, and honestly, I also get the feeling that a large percentage of that large audience won't make it past the first level. If you do happen to make it past that first level, the game throws all sorts of new challenges at you. The first level is like, bash against these rocks, go across a log, and then eventually like wall jumping between two perpendicular walls that you have to bounce between. But later in the game, you get things like crumbling rocks and balls that you have to bounce between, like balls that when you hit them, they don't just propel you as you normally would, but they bounce you significantly higher. And this is interesting. It does make for interesting gameplay, but still exceptionally difficult. Now, maybe I was just doing this wrong. Maybe I was missing the point. But for me, the challenge level was just far too great. And you can say get good in the comments if you want. But, that's how I played the game. The paddle that you use can only propel you from one end. So it's not like you're swimming and, or canoeing or whatever it is and using both ends of the paddle. It's just one end that you tap on a surface to launch you in whichever direction you hope to move. And you have to be confident in your impact with that paddle before you leave the surface, because you can't control yourself in the air. The impact that you make at the start is the distance and the speed at which you are going to be propelled forwards, backwards, left, right, up, down, wherever it may be. So Salmon Man does take a lot of practice, obviously. It is a demanding game, and it is interesting. But honestly, I feel like there could be a much gentler onboarding, a much gentler ramp to the game true. Because I do feel that despite that asking price being, very, very low, really, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to drop out super quickly because it's not the game that they were expecting. So if you're watching this, developers, come on, let's take it back a step. Let's make that intro level, or maybe even a couple of levels before what is currently the first level, a nice, easy playground to get people involved. I'm sure there's an audience already for this game that love the challenge that's provided, but for the rest of the world and people that might just jump into this game because of that really nice low price point, I think we need a more gradual increase in that difficulty. Salmon Man is out now on MetaQuest, and as I say, it's priced at £5.99, which is quite cheap. It's also got a very high rating on the MetaQuest store, although not that many reviews. So like I say, there are undoubtedly people who are going to love this experience, but for the wider VR audience, it's probably going to end up just a bit too difficult and a bit too frustrating. Amelia's Escape is a game that first caught my attention at EGX in London more than a year ago, before I even launched this channel. And now, a demo version is set to launch so you can get hands-on and try it for yourself. But before then, we're going to dive in and tell you exactly what to expect.
You think I feel safe, locked in a room of what looks like some mad scientist?
Amelia's Escape is an escape room puzzle game. Now, here at 131, we have already put out a video talking about the best escape rooms you can have in VR, which you can see up here. And we're wondering if Amelia's Escape is going to be able to join that lineup. Well, it is an escape room game, but not exactly like what you might be imagining. It is instead a virtual recreation of a real-world escape room. Now that might seem contradictory, that's surely what you expect in VR, but realistically, what that means is that many VR escape room games kind of handhold you a bit, have highlights on their objects, or kind of lead you down a path as to how the solution to this puzzle will fold out. Amelia's Escape, however, is not like that. Do not expect this game to hold your hand while you're trying to solve those puzzles. It is a game in which everything blends into the scene, and it's up to you as the player to figure out what's going to work and what's not. The demo version of Amelia's Escape that's launching as part of Steam Next Fest today, I honestly don't know what's going to be in it, but for the purposes of this preview, we stuck to the very first area of the game. We started our mission on a train, sitting our options and whatever else, and then suddenly we were confined to a very small space with a bag over our head. The story plays out that you have been taken hostage, kidnapped, and you're not quite sure why. And it's up to you to escape. I mean, that seems pretty logical for a game called Amelia's Escape, right? But what this means is that you are in a room with lots and lots and lots of objects positioned within, and no idea how to get out. There is a door that requires several key cards, but it doesn't tell you how to get them. And there is a single puzzle that is highlighted when you first start, a very obvious single puzzle. And it's this one puzzle that leads you on to experimenting with other objects. This single puzzle is realigning lights, or lamps, so that they shoot a beam across an environment. So much so video game. We've seen this before in hundreds of different video games, and what you've got here is nothing different to any other time you may have tried it. But once you've completed the single puzzle, there is no clue as to what comes next. The only way you're going to find a way to progress is by exploring everything. And I mean everything. Once you find the door where you can place the key cards, one of which you do get for completing that first puzzle, hence the fact that this is your clue to how to play the game. There are indications going down that suggest what the next puzzles might be, icons. And these icons lead to other items in the environment. For example, there is an item which has an eye-like symbol, very reminiscent of the early Oculus logo, in fact. And a box with a number keypad on it, which also has this symbol. And so you can assume if I open this box, I'll get a key card, which I can then put in the slot. And essentially, I will work through all these puzzles one by one, get the key cards required, and open the door. It seems pretty straightforward, but only once you know what it is you have to do. And you're only going to find what you have to do through deep exploration. There are lots of items that are interactable in this sequence, which do absolutely nothing. Essentially red herrings. And I personally like that take. I like the idea that you can be fumbling around with lots of different objects, hoping that this is going to be part of the solution, when in fact, they're just distractions. I mean, some people who are more familiar with traditional VR escape rooms, which have a lot more hand-holding than Amelia's Escape, might think that that is a bit off-putting. Why would you want to spend so much time with this object that means nothing? But I personally think that just adds to the drama, to the atmosphere, to the environment of you being trapped in this space and not knowing what it is you need to do to get out. At the same time, however, there are significant issues with the interactions in Amelia's Escape. There are many items, such as switches and input devices, that have differing levels of interaction, so much so that you're never quite sure when you're going to be hitting that switch or so on. And often you'll be flicking switches or inputting number combinations incorrectly, not because you didn't know the solution, but because the range at which you can interact with them varies greatly. And this also works as a counterbalance with items that you can use in the environment. You'll often find that certain items you have to get really up close to activate, and others you can be quite far away. Also, I found there were several occasions when my hands simply stopped animating. Although I was pressing the button to grab, they just weren't doing the animation, so I couldn't be sure if when I was interacting with the object, it would actually activate or pick it up or so on. There was one instance in particular where I had a fuse. I found a fuse which I needed to put in the slot in a fuse box that was clearly marked fuse. This was an obvious solution, an obvious progression to the next stage of a specific puzzle. But when I was putting the fuse in, my level of interaction was a little bit too far out, and so the fuse hit the floor. But then I could not pick this device up. I could not pick this fuse up for ages. I was struggling, bending down to pick this up, because my hands couldn't quite get close enough to it. Despite the fact that they were quite far off before, it was confusing and awkward. It's clear that when it comes to these distances and interactions, this is not Amelia's Escape's strong point and does need some work. So if you come into the demo with the expectations that this is a demo and the game is still several months from its actual official launch, then as long as you like escape rooms and you like using your brain and lateral thinking, you're going to have a good time with this Amelia's Escape demo. But if you're expecting something incredibly polished, at AAA production values, where everything works exactly as expected, you might walk away from Amelia's Escape demo thinking, this isn't for me.
Oh, a keycard. This must be important.
So when you go ahead and download that demo for PC VR, make sure that you're of the understanding this is a demo. This is a demo from a solo developer who still has many months on the road to launch. And for that, make sure that after you've tried it, you give the developer some feedback. The developer is obviously looking to have a good launch for this game. It has been a long time coming. And if you're here, I know that you love VR. So go and play the demo, give the developer some feedback, give them an idea of what it is that you feel needs work for the game, so that when we get to that summer launch that's coming for Amelia's Escape, we get a really fine VR puzzle escape room game suitable for going in the best escape room games here on 131XR next time we do another video like that. Despite first appearing on the scene almost a decade ago, Beat Saber remains one of the most popular games in VR. So of course, there's gonna be loads of imitators. And today we're looking at the newest one, Beat Bats, available for MetaQuest right now.
Look at those palm trees dance!
So Beat Bats tries to be Beat Saber. And there's nothing wrong with that. We expect a lot of imitators for Beat Saber's crown. But Beat Bats does things a bit differently in two regards. Firstly, it's completely free. You can download it right now and jump in, so, you know, when you finish watching this video, go ahead and give it a try. And secondly, it's based on custom maps. You can upload your own designs for other players to join, and there's also an option, a functionality, to create maps with AI. Now, the game launched in January 2026, yet somehow already has thousands of songs available for it. In this video, well, I'm not certain because I'm recording right now, but I imagine in the editing process, we're actually going to have to cut out a lot of the audio that's available in the game for copyright issues. So before I go any further, here's a quick few seconds reel of some of the songs that are available in the app. So you can see that despite the game only being out a few weeks, there is already a ton of music here, a ton of maps on a variety of different difficulty settings for you to jump in and beat your bats to. And honestly, I don't know how. I did a bit of research into this game and it doesn't seem like it was publicly available anywhere before it launched on the MetaQuest store. So maybe I'm missing something, but if you created a map for this game, be sure to let us know in the comments below. Now, on the store, at the front that you saw in that little clip just now, there are thousands of titles, thousands of song titles, but there's also a search functionality. And I searched for some larger bands and also some lesser known British bands that I like. And I could always find at least one or two songs by every artist I searched for. That is incredible. Each song, each map is something that you download individually, but it's really fast. It only takes a few seconds for each song. And you can jump in straight away. There's also a wide variety of backgrounds and lighting effects and different kind of bats that you can use to beat your beats with. So Beat Bats, sorry, has everything that you would expect. It's a very well-rounded package that does what Beat Saber does, but also brings in that custom map design from the PC version of Beat Saber to the MetaQuest. So that's great, right? What's there not to like about this game? Well, sadly, Beat Bats obviously doesn't have the capital behind it that Beat Saber does, and as such, it's not as well presented in action in the game. It does exactly the same thing. You have two controllers which are different colours, and different coloured things come flying towards you which you must then hit. It's got translucent objects which you must move your head to avoid. So far, so Beat Saber. So what's the problem? Well, Beat Saber was very precisely designed to give the player feedback on their progress. The blocks that come towards you get sliced in half so very accurately that the player will always know whether they're going at the right time or the right angle and so on. Beat Bats isn't that precise. The arrows that come at you, sometimes you can hit them and you'll know that you've done it, and other times you'll feel like, why am I missing this? I'm getting the timing the same each time, and yet the feedback that is given to the player is not detailed, not accurate and precise enough to tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Sometimes you'll hit a block and a little silhouette grey version of it will go bouncing into distance, and it's a nice effect, but it doesn't happen all the time, and so it's hard to get the feedback on how accurate you are being and how accurate you're not being. Plus, while Beat Saber was clearly inspired by games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and it has a win-fail state and so on, no matter how much I was messing up in Beat Bats, I could not get it to end the song for me. There was no point of failure. It would give me a minus score and say that my rank that I achieved was a very low rank and so on, but it would never cut out and go, you failed, try again. And Beat Bats has a big variety of difficulty settings, all of which are voted on by the community. So you can start off super easy and build up to some ridiculously hard challenges. And it's quite fun sometimes just to, knowing that you can't fail, just to jump into some of those ridiculously hard challenges and give it a shot and see what you can do. So Beat Bats technically doesn't stand up to Beat Saber because of this regard, because of the feedback that the player is given. But everything else it offers is really welcome. The wide variety of visual design, the ability to upload your own custom maps to different songs, and the huge library of songs that are already there for you to enjoy, whether they be AI designed or made by other players. Also, the bats that you can use, the different kind of bats, they're wacky. I don't know why we've gone this far down this rabbit hole, but it's welcome. It's welcome that you can smack these arrows with guitars or kettlebells or, obviously, not quite lightsabers, and so on. Beat Bats does everything it can to make this environment an enjoyable environment for you to play along your songs to. I'm sure as time goes on, the developer will get some feedback and work on improving the interaction the player has during the songs and make it so that that tangible, it's not really tangible, that intangible sense of feedback that you get when playing Beat Saber is translated to Beat Bats, if not as well, as close a proximity as they can possibly get. But right now, that's really where it's let down. If you can be forgiving, if you enjoy rhythm action games, and you can be like, you know what, I'm not getting the real sense of how well I'm performing, other than a metric, which is a score, then you can adapt to it over time, spending some time with it and learning the precision at which you need to be in order to keep that combo going and build up your high score. If you can be forgiving in this respect, everything else in Beat Bats is perfectly welcome, especially that entry point price of being absolutely free. And as such, if you're a fan of rhythm action games, I recommend you go and download this one right away and give it a try. See what you think about the game. If you weren't blown away by Beat Saber, you're not going to be blown away by Beat Bats. It's the same game. But for those of us who liked Beat Saber and rhythm action games in general, and wished we had some of our favourite artists in there, or a song that we really liked, we just wanted to have a little go on, Beat Bats has probably got it. Go and download it and give it a try. After some delays, Orcs Must Die by the Blade is now available for MetaQuest headsets. So of course, we've dived right into the game to tell you what it's all about. Orcs Must Die by the Blade is an adaptation of the flat screen series of games. There have been several Orcs Must Die games for traditional gaming consoles and PC, and Orcs Must Die by the Blade takes everything that is accepted as standard in those games, but adapts it to VR. And this is a brand new game built out of that formula. It's not a simple port of an existing game. The general idea of the gameplay is that you are an adventurer, a hero, whatever it may be, and some orcs are invading. And those orcs must die. Pretty straightforward, right? But that comes in two different walks. Firstly, you have traps that you can place around the environment which will trigger when an orc approaches them. And secondly, you have direct combat, which is you yourself swinging weapons to attack the enemies. This is a really great scenario, a really great setup with these two tracks, these two walks of different styles of gameplay and combat, because it does allow for strategy. You can place traps where you know enemies will be spawning or where you plan on retreating to counteract any incoming damage. If you want to thin the herd before they get to you, you can place traps that will do that. But then also, it relies on your ability, your prowess in swinging the different weapons that the game has available for you, and there are many. The default is swords. You will have two swords, one over each shoulder that you can swing, but also you can get clubs and hammers and enemy limbs. There is a huge variety that is unlocked as you progress through the game. Now, as always in this video, we're only going to show clips from the tutorial and the first mission of the game, because we don't want any spoilers. But rest assured, there's actually a lot of content in this game, different weapons and levels and so on. At the start, you are only given 2 types of traps, or rather, 2 variations on a single trap, and this is a spike trap. The tutorial confuses matters a little bit because it shows you areas in which you can place down traps, and you think that those are the only areas that these traps can be placed. But in fact, they can be placed anywhere. When you're in the first mission, the game never holds your hand. It never tells you, right, now place some traps. So you'll be playing for a little while thinking, oh, I haven't seen any of these placements anywhere, so I can't use the traps. But the traps are completely organic. Once you realise that you can place them pretty much anywhere, the game opens up its strategy much more significantly. And it does, later on, encourage you to experiment with different kinds of traps. There is a decent variety in what you can do simply by reaching for your arm, selecting the trap that you want, highlighting an area you want to place it, and if it's red, you can't, but if it's blue, go ahead and put that trap down, see what it does. And the game does offer quite a lot of trap placements. You can recall traps, uninstall them to get more available in your inventory. But honestly, the amount of placements that the game gives you, I rarely came to a situation where I was like, oh, I'm desperately needing to put more traps down. Because, you know, I still had my sword to swing. In swinging your own weapon, though, I have to say, this needs some fine-tuning. The game looks like Gorn. It is bloody and brutal and comedic in its combat, and that is wonderful. However, it's definitely not as accurate an interpretation of combat and your weapon swings like you would see in Gorn. Gorn and Gorn 2, for which you can see our review up here, was celebrated not for the wacky, bloody nature of combat, although, you know, people do like that aesthetic. It's more about the accuracy of you swinging your weapons and the translation of that into a VR experience. Orcs Must Die by the Blade gives a fair attempt at this, but the translation is definitely not as comprehensive. You have to be incredibly deliberate with your swings in order for them to land as you intend, which is a shame, because often you will, especially if you're offhand, I myself am right-handed and I found my left hand considerably weaker. So especially when swinging with my offhand, I found that they would often have no impact at all, despite the fact that I was swinging with quite some force. And at other times, you'll find that waggling is a solution to everything. So yeah, we do need some refinement in how these weapons are, how your combat moves with these weapons are executed. As I said at the start of this video, Orcs Must Die is a series that launched on flat screen platforms, and the adaptation to VR has been pretty thorough. Almost everything that, if you're a fan of those flat screen games, almost everything that you would be expecting is here in Orcs Must Die by the Blade. And of course, those of us who have been long-time VR fans will sing about the immersive nature of VR, and Orcs Must Die by the Blade is a great example of this. The Orcs Must Die games on traditional flat screen devices are super enjoyable, super fun games, but here in VR, they are massively more immersive. You genuinely feel in danger when the orcs are coming towards you, when you're being swarmed by a horde, and although there are less enemies on screen at any one time than in the flat screen games, when you are being swarmed, you do feel overwhelmed. You do feel like the pressure is on you to survive this combat. And as such, as far as flat screen to VR ports go, Orcs Must Die by the Blade is a great example of how to bring a traditional flat screen game into the immersive medium. What's more, the visual design of the game is definitely worth complimenting. Unlike Gorn, which I've compared the game to already, this isn't an arena-based game. It is a linear path going through dungeons, going from essentially objective to objective, although it dresses it up a bit differently to this. And there are alternative routes where you can find hidden items and open up new pathways, but ultimately you're still getting from A to B. And along the way, you'll be setting traps and fighting orcs, and eventually you'll come to bottlenecks where you must kill X amount of orcs in that space in order to continue. And sometimes these center around treasure chests. So, taking the first level as an example, you will get to an area where you have to kill many orcs, and once that's done, a treasure chest will appear. And once you activate the treasure chest, many more orcs will start coming, and you must make sure that you protect that treasure chest while fending off the hordes of orcs. And some of the orcs will go for the treasure chest, others will come for you, so you have to balance your strategy between keeping that safe and keeping you safe. And that visual complement, the fact that there are lots of orcs on screen at any one time, and the fact that there are lengthy, winding levels for you to go through with optional routes, the game is very well presented. The story element of the game follows the comedic, goofy nature of the presentation to the point where you have 2D cutouts representing almost like a play of the story that you are actively participating in. It's really well designed and complements the gameplay super well. So yeah, I recommend you actually watch these story sequences, despite the fact that the game does give you the option to skip them. I found them quite amusing. Orcs Must Die by the Blade on MetaQuest is a really nice complement of strategy and combat. The combat element definitely needs some work, it definitely needs tightening up, but we do know that the devs are still working on it because simply looking through the options menu shows that a smooth turn is not currently available, but is coming soon. We don't know when that will be, but the fact that it's in the menu in that format suggests that the devs are still going to continue working on the game post-launch. So, devs, if you're watching this, please tighten up that combat. But for you, as a MetaQuest owner, if you're looking for a bit of an evolution of the Gorm formula, you want something that's not just arena-based and actual level structure, throw in the strategy of the traps, then yeah, go ahead and buy Orcs Must Die by the Blade right now. Just be a bit more forgiving of that combat, and you'll have a really good time. RACECLUB is a new racing game heading to MetaQuest, so we're going to jump straight into the track and tell you all about it. RACECLUB aims to be a simulation game, but it lies somewhere between simulation and arcadey, leaning more towards simulation. This is no Project Cars, but at the same time, it's not Galaxy Kart. What we have here is a recreation of on-track racing in high-powered vehicles that's designed to be appealing to people who want that feeling, that sensation of racing these vehicles. But at the same time, it wants to be accommodating to newcomers. Now, I personally know absolutely nothing about motorsport. I don't know the difference between F1 and FV12 or any of that kind of stuff, and I'm perfectly prepared to be flamed in the comments for it. But what I do know a lot about is racing games and VR. So I've been on the track, checking this one out, and we're going to dive in, and I'll let you know what I think. RACECLUB is launching as an early access title on MetaQuest, and with that, obviously, comes some conditions. Some limitations that you should probably be aware of. The game is solid. The foundations are there, and the gameplay, it works. It's not exactly revolutionary, but it's solid, and it does the job that it's asked of it. There is a lot of customization in terms of that simulation aspect, how much you want to have the game assist you, be it racing lines or auto braking, and a few other considerations. And this makes the game suitable to appeal to those who want that intense motorsport recreation, and also gamers who just want to experience the thrill of racing high-powered vehicles. But beyond this, the game is severely lacking in content. At launch, there are only 2 gameplay modes, with a third set to be coming soon, 4 tracks, and 2 cars. That's not a lot. I do like the ability to customize your car, to change different colours that are on the vehicle, or even just randomize it, so that you do look different when you're racing against other people's vehicles online. You do stand out and people will begin to recognize your vehicle, which is great because most of the game right now is about racing against times that other players have set, or ghosts. The 2 modes that are available right now are Hot Lap and Duel, and they're well rounded, they're well positioned, but this is all there is. Hot Lap sees you continuously race around a track, set in the best time that you possibly can. And as you increase your time, or decrease your time, you will find that you'll move up through the ranks and race against different vehicles. So for example, if you manage to shave 4 seconds off your time and jump up 2 places on the leaderboard, you'll no longer be racing against the same ghosts as you were in the last lap. You'll be racing against your nearest competitors from that point. And this is a great system. This encourages you. Given the absence of the race mode at present, this does encourage you to want to try to get better, to want to try and overtake that next challenger that's in front of you. The duel mode functions largely the same, but only against a solo competitor. And Honestly, there isn't enough variation in here to pull you back again and again and again. We do need more. We need more gameplay modes, more tracks, more vehicles, basically more of everything. The game is comfortable visually. It's not breaking any new ground or changing your expectations of what can be achieved on that MetaQuest headset, but it does the job. There's multiple viewpoints that you can have in the game, and most definitely the cockpit view is the best view, at least in my experience with the game. This allows you to grab hold of the wheel with both hands and steer as if you were steering with a real vehicle. The chase camera, where you're positioned behind the car, is locked into just stick control. And this is like a traditional flat screen game, tilting the analog stick in order to turn around the track. However, it's definitely not as precise as something like Gran Turismo or Forza, based on that stick control. And so, realistically, I wouldn't advise this option to any players. VR is about immersion, and honestly, RACECLUB does a really good job of immersing you in that thrill of that racing on the track from that cockpit view, so why would you want to look elsewhere? Of course, RACECLUB comes with a full complement of stats for you to run through, and leaderboards for you to compete against friends or even just random people online, and it works. Everything that is here has been well created and is delivered in a good fashion. It's just such a shame that there's so very little of it at launch. I honestly played the game for about half an hour and was like, right, okay, so what comes next? And there wasn't anything coming next. It was going through the same process again. Now, for motorsport aficionados, people that know much more about this sport than I do, that's probably enough. Spending time refining your lines on the track and trying to shave off fractions of a second, I can see how that could be appealing to fans of the sport. But for a more casual racing fan, someone like me who prefers racing games to paying attention to the sport as such, there's not enough depth here to call me back. I do like the fact that there is a balance between simulation and, I don't know what you want to call it, light simulation, simulation light, and that I can customize the variety of different accessibility features that are in this game. But that does exist in other racing games. It's not unique to RACECLUB. So what we have here is essentially an adaptation of what we've come to expect from flat screen games for VR. And if you look at it in that perspective, RACECLUB does a pretty good job of this. But at the same time, as I've mentioned throughout this review, that content, the variety of content that are in the game definitely needs to be pumped up and quickly. The caliber of the gameplay is really solid. The foundations are all there. We just need to add more flavor now. So devs, if you're watching this, please do hit us up and let us know when that first content drop is coming, because as long as we've got a big drop coming soon, that's going to make RACECLUB a recommendation, not just for racing fans, but for racing game fans as well. Vortex 9 has now launched in VR, and this one is quite different to what you might be expecting from a VR first-person shooter. Stick around and I'll tell you all about it. So Vortex 9 originated as a mobile game, a free-to-play mobile game designed for younger gamers. And it's made the jump to VR, but it's still fully compatible with that original mobile game. The game is a multiplayer arena-based shooter, and on mobile devices, it's played in third person, but here in VR, it's played in first person. There is supposed to be some functionality where you can switch between first and third person in VR on the fly, but honestly, I couldn't find it. And I was looking everywhere. But that's fine, because it plays really well in first person in VR. When you first start the game, there's this strange vignette which literally takes up like at least 40% of the screen, makes you feel like you're looking for a pinhole. But you can just simply go to the menu after your first battle and remove it completely, which is what I did. And because obviously I'm quite comfortable in VR, I didn't have any kind of simulation sickness or locomotion issues with the full vignette removed. But the fact that that vignette is there by default when you first start is evidence of its roots, of the fact that it is a mobile game designed for younger gamers, and the developers are seemingly quite conscious about the fact that they are targeting a younger audience, maybe an audience that isn't as familiar with VR as I myself am, and probably you watching this video. There are many other hallmarks of this translation from mobile to VR as well. For example, the fact that your gun is simply floating around. There's no arm or hands connecting it to your body, it's simply floating in the air. On your offhand, which is your left hand, again, I couldn't find any option to change this. There is no functionality as standard. You can press a button that brings up a map and your ammo count and so on. And that's great. I don't know why this isn't turned on by default, if I'm honest. But realistically, you're playing with your head, the left stick to move, and the right controller. There's no other kind of functionality in this game. It's a really simple experience. And again, that simplistic nature of the game is due to the target audience for this game. I am not the target demographic, and yet I still had fun with Vortex 9. And why, you might ask? That's because it's really well designed. It is genuinely, for that target demographic, a really fun, simple, immediate game. It's not trying to be something it's not. It's not trying to be Roblox or Minecraft like so many other games designed for children are these days. It's trying to be a fun, immediate shooting game that you can play with your friends or other people randomly online. That's all there is to it. There are new unlockables that you can get through in-game currency or real-world money. Through in-game currency or buying additional in-game currency, you can get customizable skins and so on. And you can also unlock pets. You can buy eggs to unlock pet characters. Now, I went whole free to play. The developers of the game, or maybe their PR company, offered me some coins with my review of this game, but I was like, no, I don't want that. I want to see what this is like for the real consumer. If you're downloading this game today, what experience would you get? And I found that there is a strange, remnant of the mobile game, the fact that you have to put the eggs in to incubate and they take a little while to hatch. And then in order to get enough pieces of a pet, you have to get more eggs, which are done through spending money. There's also daily events where you can earn more coins through completing specific tasks. So I've got to assume that at some point eggs become available as one of these tasks, but they weren't during the time that I had for this review. What I did get time for is to look through all of the menu systems and the customization features that are available. And there's not a lot, but there's enough to provide some decent variety. I'm assuming that there's lots of things that happen over time periods, limited time, costumes and pets and things like that. So when you get into this game and you come back and play it more often, you can get a lot of different customization features. But that being said, in all of the matches that I played, there wasn't that much variety in the avatars on display. Now, this game is hugely popular on mobile, and it's fine if you've never heard of it before because maybe you're not the target audience, that younger gaming demographic that I keep talking about. I certainly had never heard of this game before this mobile port was revealed, and as such, I can believe that there are a lot of gamers out there. The audience, as I say, for this game is actually quite big, and I can believe that a lot of the audience out there are purely free to play, that they're not spending huge amounts of money on cosmetics and so on for this game. And that's fine. If the developers can create a sustainable business out of this game without pressurizing younger children in order to spend money that they realistically don't have, I don't see the harm in this. It's not a particularly violent game. I mean, you are shooting people, but there's no blood or anything like that. And the VR adaptation has been handled pretty well. There are some slight issues that I would like to see fixed in time. For example, when you die, on mobile, it's obvious, although I've never seen it, it's pretty obvious that the camera shoots over to the person that killed you and follows them around for a bit. In VR, you're basically sat on their head. So let's fix that up a little bit and maybe show me where that first to third person toggle is, because I couldn't see it anywhere. But aside from these minor grievances, Vortex 9 is actually just a fun game. Now that said, it's not breaking any new ground. It's certainly not going to enrapture the mature VR audience that are used to much more complicated experience and heavier strategy in their first-person shooter multiplayer games. But it's not supposed to, right? It's for an audience that is much younger, and this may well be their first VR game, and for that, I highly recommend Vortex 9. If you know someone who's younger, you've got children of your own maybe, or younger siblings, or even your friends' children, and they want to try VR for the first time, Vortex 9 is a pretty good way of doing it. It's also a great stepping stone for kids that already love Vortex 9 on mobile devices as a way of showing them what is possible with VR. It's a game that is confident and competent at everything it does, and while what it does might not be enough for someone like me to keep coming back week after week after week after week, for younger gamers, most certainly what is here is well delivered and comes highly recommended for that audience.